Hey friends, it is Chrissy Kirkman. Welcome back to the Old School Food Freedom Podcast, where we are going to kick it as old school as it gets with how God created us to live. And that is free from food shame, free from all shame, free from dieting and food rules, and free to live with Jesus. Well, today I have our guest, Angela Lamond. Thank you for being on the show. Welcome, Angela.
Oh, it's such an honor. Thank you so much for having me, Chrissy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Today, this topic is basically it's what eating disorders can leave behind and what God can redeem. So someone like me who has had years and years of these food struggles, it leaves behind a weight that can rock some things in your world and rock relationships and your relationship to food, but God can redeem it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Let me just introduce you to our guest, Angela Lamond. She's a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and licensed professional counselor in the great state of Texas. She's the founder of Lamond Nutrition, where she helps children, adults, and families find balance and healing through a Christ-centered, holistic approach to health. Angela combines her expertise in nutrition and mental health to help others find peace with food, body, and mind. Angela, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. So you know that we kick off this show with a fun question of what old school item or experience do you miss from back in the day? I'm ready to hear it.
Oh, man. I thought about this, and the first thing I thought about was I want to know who are my BlackBerry fans out there. I loved
You mean like the phone? BlackBerry?
The BlackBerry where it slides to the side and you had this little like typewriter, little tiny little keyboard that you could do, and then you'd slide it back or you slide it up actually. And I love that phone. That's still my favorite phone. For some reason, it just worked with my brain really well. And I was able easily to use both of my thumbs. Now, for some reason, I can't get my brain to use both my thumbs on a regular iPhone.
Right. I know. Why is that a thing? Is it
I don't know.
age,
I don't know. I think it might be an age thing, but I type really fast with one, but
I feel like finger dexterity after 40, something happens. I cannot operate my fingers. I love that you said the BlackBerry.
The BlackBerry. I love it. I mean, it's not super old school, but
yeah, well, it is. I mean, hold on now.
Yeah, it just depends on how old you are, right?
It's old school because wasn't that about 20 years ago? Wasn't that like 05 and stuff? That's 20.
So.
How is that 20
least.
Years? Ew.
It's unbelievable.
It's so gross to me. But here we are. Like, I honestly will always feel like 2000 was maybe, I'll even give it 15 years. Like, I always want to say it feels like it's 10 years ago. I'm going to give it 15 years ago. But that's not reality. I got to snap into reality because when 2005 is 20 years ago, that's insanity.
It is insanity.
I didn't ever have a BlackBerry. I did have a Palm Pilot, and we had this little stylus pin thing that came out of the side. It was so fancy. Yeah, but that didn't last for long. But I always secretly wanted a BlackBerry, but never.
I think there's a lot of BlackBerry fans. I think your listeners are going to be like, me too.
Yeah.
Because anytime I mention it to other people, they're like, oh my gosh, I loved my BlackBerry.
Bring it back.
So I think we need to bring it back. I think we need to,
And if anything, I can have like BlackBerry cobbler with the seeds. I don't really prefer that, but I do like the flavor. Well, I say they bring it back immediately for all our BlackBerry lovers. All right.
Let's all vote.
Let's vote. Hey, okay. So today, I want us to just explore help us to know, what are some possible long-term or permanent effects of eating disorder? And let me say also, this is a requested topic by a listener from the Hello Freedom community. We kind of polled the listeners and asked, is there a topic that we haven't covered that you would like for us to talk about? And this was one that she asked for. So she wants to know the long-term or permanent effects of eating disorders and the healing God can bring. So to start out, Angela, I would love for you to share a little bit about your journey and what led you into this work, because when you shared this with me, it seemed really crucial that we hear this.
Yeah. a lot of people that do this work really have a lot of a personal story that drives the passion that they have for this work. And I was no different, as a teenager. I was just living for tomorrow. I had started smoking cigarettes at 12 years old. I was the youngest of 6 kids. It was like the combined, if anybody knows the Brady Bunch, I was Cindy. And everybody in my family smoked cigarettes. So, of course, I was the one that wanted to do what everybody does. And so by the time I was 17, I had some lung problems. And the doctor asked me how old I was. I said I was 17. He goes, wow, that is the worst set of lungs I've ever heard on a 17-year-old. I'm going to promise you something. If you don't quit smoking, by the time you're in your mid-30s, you're going to have serious lung problems. And it was literally like a light switch moment. And it was right around that 17, 18 when, neuroscientists say that like really understanding the long-term ramifications of your decisions really start kind of happening. So I think that corpus callosum was like closing in my head, and it was all happening at the same time, like, oh my goodness. And it ended up being, I think that doctor, I wish I could go find him, because he was one of the biggest blessings that got me to like really focus on my health. And at that time I was coming to Dallas, actually. I graduated high school, quit smoking, never did that again, and got really into health and wellness. And back then, believe it or not, there was no internet. And so to get your information, it was, usually books and Shape magazine and all the things. So when I get into something, I go really big. So I, was working out a lot, eating super healthy. Later, I found out when I went to become a dietitian that I had really a functional eating disorder. It was over control, working out too much, eating. Back then, I don't know, the 90s was fat-free everything, like now it's carbs. Eventually protein will get attacked, but back then it was fat-free everything. So I followed that really, really well. And, I had a lot of disordered eating, and flash forward 10 years, I finally decide to go for it and quit my corporate marketing job and become a dietitian. And I had just got married around that same time. And once I went to school, I loved the sciences. And for me, learning about our bodies ended up being my freedom. I really just was in awe of what our bodies can do at the cellular level, and how our body has a way of kind of trying to keep homeostasis. So when we try to over control, our bodies are behind the scenes trying to do all these things to try to keep us safe and healthy and alive. And over the course of time, eating disorders really wreak havoc physically on every body system. And so I wanted to communicate the science about how our bodies can be trusted. And that's really kind of what I've been doing since 2004 as a dietitian, and then starting a company of dietitians that offer this type of empowerment through insurance coverage. So now Lamont Nutrition has 17 dietitians, and we span across 20 states, which is such an amazing thing. And recently, in the last 5 years since we started our Christian integration nutrition, and 9 of the 17 of our dietitians use Christ's healing power within the sessions. And we partner with therapists. Now that I'm a therapist also, I share a lot of nutrition clients with our dietitians, and I work with dietitians all over the Dallas Metroplex to partner and keep people feeling comfortable in their relationship with food. Because at the end of the day, everybody has a relationship with food. It's kind of like, where is that with you?
Wow, we need to get them on our Christian Treatment Finder.
Yes.
Because across that many states, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and they're amazing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Angela, you said you started in pediatrics. Can you tell us a little more about what that looked like?
Yeah, so, early in my career, I was working at a major pediatric hospital system, and I was trained in all areas of pediatric care. And I was part of a program called Lean Families. Lean was the acronym Lifestyles, Exercise, and Nutrition, for kids that were at risk for diabetes. And it was for kids that had started becoming like overweight on the clinical charts with a BMI at or above 85th percentile.
And for those who can't see because you're listening, she did air quotes. What you air quoted, what did you just air quote?
Yeah, overweight or obese,
Air quoting.
Yeah, according to this traditional CDC guidelines. And so I, being trained as a dietitian, we were very traditionally trained about, obesity is a disease. We have to talk about to our families about our kids' body weights and the impact that it could have. And so we were trained that way. And we have to kind of tell kids how they have to eat and what they shouldn't eat and all these things. And so this was a program that was partially funded by a grant, and it included dietitian. Now, I did love that they included a social worker. They had a physical therapist for the exercise piece, and then they did have a medical doctor. And we kind of made it up as we went, but it was a good program. And we really did try not to emphasize the body weight, even though they had to get weighed each time that they saw us. And we could never separate what we were teaching them lifestyle-wise from the kids being so nervous about coming in and doing a weight check. And what was interesting about this program, it was a surprising finding at the time. Now to us, it's very obvious, that at least half the kids gained more weight during the program, and their trajectory of weight gain actually went up faster than if they wouldn't even have been intervened, because of the pressure of doing this weight. And then the dynamic, even though we would tell the parents to avoid over controlling their eating, they would, because, the doctors have scared them that their kids are going to get diabetes or they're going to get, high cholesterol, heart disease. And so that fear really drove the parents to do lots of things in the family, which really kind of made the dynamic of the home more chaotic. And as a result, a lot of these kids gained even more weight. So I came away from that just really flabbergasted. Again, you have to think this was early 2000s. We've come so far now. But back then, that was really what really got me into the interesting behavioral health component of, in addition to me coming out of my functional eating disorder myself, is that over control leads to out of control. And this is what happens that people don't realize or appreciate when we make people afraid of food or make people afraid. They do a lot of things, even parents. We might parent in an anxiety, fear-based way that then leads to a lot of other unintended consequences. So that really ended up being kind of my first entree into observing a lot of these things. And then as we continued to practice in private practice with families, we saw the same dynamic. We saw a lot of diet behavior in just adults. And really about 10 years ago, we started really training in specifically eating disorders. So after that, Lamont Nutrition, which was already formed, really decided we were gonna go to more of a weight neutral approach to helping people, empowering people to make them feel that their bodies are not the center of their pursuit of health, and that everybody, doesn't matter what size or shape they are, they should be pursuing health in the same way. Pretty much neutralizing the playing field of how to help not one person feel like they're being called out in the family. Let's try to avoid problems from happening versus, hey, we're going to just do whatever we want until the doctor says it's a problem. I think we need to do better as, a health profession and understand the mental health and the behavioral health aspects to this conversation.
Yeah, it's a lot. Everything that you just shared is a lot. Like, I'm feeling the grace lens for the practitioners and professionals who felt that they were doing the right thing, felt that it was a great approach. You don't know what you don't know. And
right.
And so shame off of them. And then thinking of the kids who were just so young and being afraid to be on the scale and do a weigh-in and what messaging they might have received, that they're now adults adults living life and what, could they be listening to this episode right now? And like, that was me.
Absolutely.
Oh, grace for you and seeds that were planted, like God can redeem it. Like that right there.
Absolutely.
That's something that an eating disorder, even if it's not, some type of food struggle, like God can redeem that. So that is my prayer in this as we continue, that if something has been said to you in the past when you were a child, when you were a teen, about your body, about your food, about your weight, about anything that could have harmed you, Lord, I pray that you can, in Jesus' name, redeem that. Start that process right now and redeem that. Sorry to derail, but I just felt like I had to say that because eating disorders affect every part of us. It's body, it's emotions, it's relationships, it's our connection with God. So something that I feel is loss of connection and belonging. What do you want to say about that? Like the identity, or that is a big loss, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, whether it starts when you're young in the formative years, which can be a little bit harder to undo, right? When you're met as a 6-year-old and your pediatrician, tells you your body's not right. That's a massive blow for a developing brain. And then the parents reinforcing it through trying to quote help and make them healthier. Or if you could be in a stage of life where your body's changing. When we talk about body image, I know that the real popular way to talk about body image is being thin enough, but it really kind of translates in so many ways. I always say our bodies are kind of like our avatars for life. If you ever play a game and you pick out, what your avatar is going to be, like, what is that going to look like? We get one avatar in any shape, size, form, demeanor, our reactions, our mannerisms seem wrong, then we're going to want to be hyper-focusing on how we are portrayed to be good enough for other people. And it can manifest in the size of your body. It could be, your nose. It could be if, you have a handicap. It could be as you're aging and you're starting to, wrinkle and everything sagging. Like all of these things are body image and they affect us. And I think this is a thing with common humanity that we have to kind of have an open conversation with. And it's all the same of, how I look dictates my worthiness. And we know as believers that one of the most powerful things, and this is one of the things that I'm doing as a therapist, is really working on the God attachment for helping people to see who they are and the one that made them.
At Finding Balance, we believe freedom is not found in diets or body image. It is found only in Jesus. That's why we've created tools like our daily vitamin devotionals, prayer groups, and community, and the Lasting Freedom course to encourage you on your journey. So check them out at findingbalance.com and take your next step toward freedom in Him.
We think about being in our mother's womb, but we have to remember that God the Father knitted us. Like He knew us even before, and then He placed us in our mother's womb. So some people that have a lot of wounds when it comes to their parents, their mothers, their fathers, we have to realize that God of the universe actually was the one that decided to place you into life and where to place you. And He is the originator of what He has seen in you. And so attaching back to Him and really understanding the love, the magnitude of love that God has for you, and that He doesn't make mistakes, and really leaning into, I know who I am because of the Creator of the universe, and really doing some work there helps us when we are trying to go through the brokenness of what an adult may have done, whether it be a parent or a healthcare professional or a friend or even a bully at school, undoing all of those things and really understanding, that those things were not truth about them. And so this all starts a lot of disordered eating and eating disorders. When I work with my clients on the mental health side, it's a lot about self-worth, self-esteem, who am I, identity stuff. And so unraveling that really helps your relationship with food. There's a direct correlation. It's the reason why I went back to school in 2020 to get my master's in clinical mental health counseling. And I'm like, you know what? This is everything that I loved as a dietitian, the relationship building. I want to do this more because I got to a point where I wanted to go to places and I'm like, oh, I'm the dietitian. I can't do that. Like I would, tell the therapist, I'm like, you know what? I want to do this. So COVID really allowed me to go and chase that next step in helping people to be the best versions of themselves. It's not a change of profession as it is. It's all kind of continuing to build on itself.
Yeah, what a gift that is that you had that time, that season to get some clarity around that. And like you were saying, so much of this comes back to how we see ourselves versus how Christ sees us, or how we interpret that the world sees us versus how Christ sees us. So something I just feel that is really important is I know that, Angela, you would feel this way, but I encourage you, friend, to have curiosity instead of shame around these feelings. Like curiosity, become curious about it. Like, so I'll just be honest and real because that's how we do it here on the Old School Food Freedom.
Yeah, of course.
But, in perimenopause, I've identified that there are certain times of the month, specifically the end of the month, and sometimes it'll overlap with the beginning of a new month.
Yeah.
But toward the end of the month, I will have some significant drops in, I think it's estrogen, some drops in hormones, we'll say, that get me so low, self-loathing, self-hating. Why am I on this earth? Why, God cannot use me. Just stinking thinking from the pit of hell. But like, it's almost like the enemy knows that my state is weakened because of those. It's like, I just feel like it's like I'm more vulnerable at those times of the month. So I just melt down. But like, I'm having these kinds of issues and I'm like, man, where is this coming from? But I think it's all of that together. But like, I've been really trying so hard to be curious about it rather than shaming myself upon all this other shame, to just slow down and, okay, I'm curious. Oh yeah, look what time of the month it is. It's the end of the month. I'm having these drops. I've tracked it enough I know, like, to the point where I try to not schedule a lot of in-person meetings just to give myself more grace during that time, if I can.
That's nice.
To just be able to cope or pause or, fall flat on my face with Jesus and cry it out. Like, fall into my husband's arms, which I've had to do a couple times last week, and he was there for me. So, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to say I know what it's like to struggle to see myself the way that Christ sees me.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to become curious. I encourage you to become curious about that.
Chrissy, I love that, because the more that we can kind of see that this is a universal kind of thing going through life, trying to grow and learn. That's really part of this process we call life, right? A lot of times I work with young ladies that are expecting themselves to be these wise elder women.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of these ladies that I see, they are very wise. I think, once you have the Holy Spirit, there's so much wisdom that comes upon you in the spiritual realms, but you need to understand that our brains, even when we look at the neuroscience, and this is what really my new passion is, really learning about the neuroscience of neuroplasticity and the ways that we learn, and how, new habits are formed. And it really goes to your point, Chrissy, that if we can be curious and we can learn and practice, it's kind of like, you're a college student, you don't learn something and expect yourself to be able to not only know it and put it into practice every single time, right? Life is about, I learned this and I gotta practice this some more, because practice forms new positive grooves in our brain. And so if we're not allowing ourselves this space to be curious, to learn and to grow and to slowly kind of do better, but really it's a process over time, that will get you to where you need to be. And you'll get there faster if you give yourself that compassion along the way. I also want to say that Remember in Matthew 4, they talk about Jesus was tempted by the evil one. And one of the main ways he did it was through his identity. Like, if you really are the Son of God, you will do this, this, and this, right? And he does that with us as well. It's the same tricks, is getting us to question what our identity is. He also tempted him with power. Power was another thing that he does. So, we might be looking for distorted ways to be able to get a leg up and do things, or maybe follow the way the world dictates, like success, being perfect on our outside body in order to get what other people think are going to be, acceptable. That means that we will then hit this level of satisfaction, which is a complete lie, right? So we have to remember the tactics of the enemy do not change. They're the same. And so during times that we're tired, we're starving ourselves, right? We're not caring self-care. I mean, basic stuff. A lot of times people are trying to be so anxiety driven and achieving things that they drop some of these basic self-care things that actually would allow them to have more of a wise mind. And so I'm reminding them in sessions to get back to those, what I call protective factors.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned the mind and the brain. That's a perfect segue into physical changes. Yeah. Let's go there.
Yeah, they're doing more MRIs on people that have had eating disorders, and we're seeing that, there's actual brain damage. And again, neuroplasticity always has the last say. Like, redemption is in the brain's ability to heal. So I want to say that from the offset, that this is not meant to tell you that, like, you should have never had your eating disorder or disordered eating. But it might give you a little bit of information as to why it takes a lot longer to move on, to form new brain patterns and these kind of things. That there's physical grooves that can occur in the brain in repeated thought processes. So to think something new takes practice in order to form a new groove in the physical brain. And, some of these things take years to kind of slowly go away. So these things are facts that we have to understand whenever we're trying to continue to move forward. When, maybe if you have disordered eating or eating disorder and you have a setback, that is kind of something that sometimes does happen because of the damage that has been in the brain and the thought processes. And I had a therapy client that actually was able to get some brain imaging done, and they were able to document the areas of the brain that can show damage in thinking and, the ability to process obsessive thoughts. They can actually see it on the brain, which is really fascinating.
Wow, that's impactful.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause right here and remind you, friend. What we're talking about today is not about fear or hopelessness. No. The enemy does not get a hold of any territory here. When we're going to listen to these things that might be hard, like I'm saying this because I already feel like, man, if I just hadn't done this or that, like, no, we can listen with curiosity and compassion.
Absolutely.
This can feel heavy, but we want you to know that God is present even here. So there's my little
disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer of like, please try to remember. Again, I'll say it in every episode.
Yeah.
This isn't about shame. There's no shame intended. Just be curious. So like,
there's no condemnation in Christ.
Yes.
And in fact, he knew how damaging that guilt and shame is. And it is the reason why he gave us an out. In order for Jesus to have died for the right, cause, we have to just claim gratitude. Anytime we're struggling, just saying, thank you, Father, for your grace and mercy. Like, receive it.
Yes.
Receive what you are learning and growing, and the people that are being put in your life to help encourage you, and to know that this is a very common thing. And I think the brain stuff that we're talking about, again, is to remind you that, this is hard because our brain, forms these habits that do take some time to heal. If you were raised by, a parent that dieted all the time, those were your formative years, right? to unlearn that behavior is going to take some time. Give yourself that grace to unlearn it and not be mad if you turn to a dieting behavior or something like that. That healing is going to really need space and support to do that. So that's really the message here.
Yeah. So there's more physical changes I know that have impacts, I guess. What about nutritional and metabolic impacts?
Yeah. So our bodies have an amazing way to try to stay alive. But unfortunately, enduring eating disorders deals with a lot of physical ramifications that can sometimes be permanent. Unfortunately, the two biggest body systems, two or three that take the biggest hit, are going to be bone health. Because a lot of starving specifically is going to leach a lot of nutrients from the skeletal system. And sometimes whenever this kind of stuff happens early in life, you can have irreversible damage. And I have seen people having really, really bad osteoporosis at 15 years old. And that is not something that can really be completely fixed. And so, it's one of the most deadly mental health disorders out there. And so then you've got your reproductive system, right? So people that have long enduring eating disorder behavior have a harder time conceiving, which then can bring up I have somebody I'm thinking about now that I've been working with, that she really has gone through such beautiful healing. She's a Christian that was married, and because of a long-standing eating disorder, she really had a hard time conceiving. She ended up having to go through IVF, and now she's had a lot of thyroid issues and things that are tied back to for many years when she was severely underweight. We have to process that over and over again, because you can kind of self-implode or kind of start getting angry at yourself that why you did what you did to your body. And that's why I'm saying it's really, really important, as you are possibly seeing the effects that may or may not go away, that you can be reminded to join Chrissy and I, to, let the enduring part that the eating disorder leaves behind is the reminders of the destruction it can leave behind, and that God can use your voice to be able to speak into people that are younger. When you know better, you do better. And some of the people that I feel like have recovered the best and have done the best with their past is to be able to allow God to have glory about it and be open with talking about it, and having more conversations with people that deal with this. And so they don't feel like they're alone. One of the girls that I feel like is doing really well, she is now about to finish nursing school, and she went to higher level of care many, many, many times. But it was a person that took the time to go back to the eating disorder place that she happened to be hospitalized in, and it was a talk. And it was this girl, and she said exactly what this young lady needed to hear, which was, I'm never going to stop thinking this way. I'm always going to be plagued with these obsessive thoughts about food and my body. And the girl that came in to speak, she says, you may be thinking that you're always going to think this way, and that, you're always going to deal with these same feelings about your body and this. And she goes, I want you to know that I've been there, and I felt like there was no way out. And I am here to speak into you to say, I no longer have those thoughts. And everybody deals with self-esteem at times, but her body, her brain has healed, and she is speaking life into people to encourage them that there is a better day coming, and God can use anything that was broken for his glory.
I love how God works it out that way.
Another thing is, and this is a really big one, is the GI tract, the gastrointestinal system. When we we start restricting or we start having other eating disorder behaviors, which I don't want to like list for ideas.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
But it does confuses the systems, right? Like, are we supposed to be digesting food? Are we supposed to be eliminating food? So gastric emptying, which is the process of our body pulling things into our lung, conveyor belt, and, processing nutrients and things, all of it gets really skewed and irregular. So we find that people that have disordered behaviors with food are going to have issues with bloating, gas, constipation, could be diarrhea if, you've been restricting and then all of a sudden you eat, a whole box of cookies. That can give you diarrhea. The GI tract gets very highly impacted.
Like, does indigestion come into play there too?
Indigestion, reflux, especially people that might have certain behaviors. And some of these will get better as you eat normally and you're not restricting or doing other things to compensate. There's still some things that never seem to go away. And so the longer that this type of thing occurs, the longer that your body may endure these issues. A lot of women that had disordered eating all through their life, they get to perimenopause and menopause, and this becomes arguably, there's some data to show that people that have a history of eating disorder, that menopause can be a lot harder of a situation to kind of walk through.
Okay, pause. So my homegirls out there in perimenopause.
Yeah.
We got to link arms and we have to support each other through this, because maybe that's why it's so hard for some of us. We are over here having conversations on the daily about this stuff. So I'm sorry, you were talking about hormones. Please continue with the hormones.
Well, and I mean, think about it's hormones, and then it's somatic tissue, so muscle, basically. A lot of starving yourself and things like that. When we get older, we already have this thing called sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss, right?
Yeah.
So that comes with age. It starts in our late 20s and it picks up in our 30s, picks up even more in our 40s. It just, every decade, that's part of the aging process, is muscle deteriorates. So if we are already going into perimenopause, doing a lot of restricting and stuff, and the world standards say that you're, I don't know, a thin person, but if somebody does a body fat on you, body fat could be high and your lean tissue pounds is very low, you're going to have harder time. We've seen underweight women even going into menopause with prediabetes and diabetes, surprisingly. The real common thought is people that have too much weight are the ones that are going to get diabetes. That's not necessarily the case. It's really tied to how much lean tissue you have. So lean tissue requires you eating in order to maintain it and to keep it, right? But when we feel like our bodies are out of control, do we want to feed our bodies in the way that our natural hunger and satisfaction cues are telling us? We feel out of control because of perimenopause or menopause. So we second guess, am I really hungry? But that really will impact your ability to build and maintain muscle. Do you see how that works?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to trust the process.
And trust the Lord to get you through the process too. I'm over here like, oh my gosh, it feels so hard sometimes. Yes. Girls, you are not the only ones going through this. We're in it together.
Yes.
Okay, so Angela, are there any other physical changes you would want to mention?
Yeah, so, as we were talking about muscle wasting as we get older, and that is accentuated with people that have eating disorder behavior. Remember, the heart is a muscle. And in really intense eating disorder cases, people do have heart problems. Like the rhythm of their heart starts really acting wrong. And so they can get heart disease easier. So this is another thing that we need to kind of consider whenever we're thinking about growing older and being empowered by fear-free messages about living a healthy life.
Well, that's really helpful. And so I think it's kind of to package this up because I'm sure that
Yes.
there are even more than we could list. But
Yes.
as at a high level, I think that's a good coverage. And again, let me just remind you, we can listen with curiosity and compassion and trust that God can bring healing. So some of the ways that healing can show up is with Christ-centered care. We have our Christian
Absolutely.
Treatment Finder, christiantreatmentfinder.com or cedcn.org. All the same thing, but it's a resource that lists all kinds of Christian professionals that can, have a campaign against eating disorders that can help you. There's power in Christ-centered community where you can be seen
Absolutely.
and known and understood. You want to get with people who create a joy stream within you. Angela, you have, I
Yes.
remember we were talking and how have you seen God use community and relational connection to bring healing to women in recovery?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought it up because I'm training in the Life Model Works under Jim Wilder, which is kind of, he's written a lot of books about having whole brain Christianity and how to bring the relational side of living life and sharing life with other Christ followers. Discipleship, being in multi-generational community is such a key piece. Sharing joy, which he defined.
Can I pause you?
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know what multi-generational community, I mean, I understand it,
Yeah.
but what if someone's like, I don't know what that means? What does that mean? Simply.
Well, I mean, it's just simply, people of different levels in their Christian walk, really. I mean, we think of age, but it's not always the case. But
True.
a lot of times it is just people at different phases in their life, right?
Christian maturity. Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes you need just somebody that's at your same level, and others you need to speak into you.
Yeah.
And this is really where I think the church sometimes needs to do a little better because we save people from the pit of fiery hell, but then we kind of just leave them out on their own sometimes. I think we need to do better with discipleship. And that kind of leads me to the eating disorders, that what it can lead behind is sometimes disrupted relationships within the family unit because a lot of people don't understand eating disorders if you aren't living that out. We find a lot of families get broken up because of people not be able to understand the person that's dealing with the eating disorder. And so what it can leave behind is just the relational wreckage. So I highly recommend that if you see some of that never really, healing, even after you're in this acute phase or you're coming out of it and you're living healthy, that you still think there's some relational work that needs to be done, I highly recommend that maybe you visit with a church pastor or even a eating disorder therapist that knows all of the ins and outs of what this can do with the family dynamics or even marital dynamics, depending on who it is.
Yeah, because it can definitely wreck some relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Angela, what encouragement would you want to leave us with? I mean, I can say for me, I know that God redeems, God restores, and He meets us in every part of the journey. So what would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, just like anything else in your life, I mean, it's important to remember what God has done. Anytime you're in a challenge of life and you're feeling like a lack of hope, it's important to kind of look back and see, you remember, in the Old Testament, a lot of prophets were not just people that foretold the future. They also reminded everyone of what God has already done. And so it is so critical to give your emotions space and grieve whatever the loss has been with what the eating disorder is left behind. But then you need to grieve with hope and know that God can redeem, even when you don't feel like it, that He can redeem your story. And every story has a part that can be glorified through Him, and you can actually get peace on the other side.
Amen. That is such a great way to wrap this. And it's so true. And I remember times in my life where I would just be grieving, just mourning, lamenting what it was. And in those same guttural cries, crying out, Lord, please use this. Don't let this be in vain. If I have to go through it to help someone else, make it worth it. And it's been like tenfold that he's
Yes.
done that. So I encourage you to do that. And Angela, I'm so glad that you were here today.
Me too.
Thank you for coming and sharing.
It's such an honor. And I have to say on record, just thank you for all you do. I mean, you really are such a pillar. So what you have been through and what you have done with it is so inspiring to all of us, including me. So thank you.
Aw, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Friends, you can find links to connect with Angela in the show notes. And she did have a reference, something we wanted to mention, but we just kind of ran out of time. There is an author named Hosanna Wong, and she has a book called You're More Than What You've Been Told. And in our pre-production, I was really moved. Like, I can't wait I'm not a big reader. I'll probably listen to the audio, but it sounds so good. And I think that this really, if you are struggling with what you heard today and processing through, I think this would be a good book for you to get. So, all right, Angela, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chrissy.
Thank you for listening to the Old School Food Freedom Podcast. For over 20 years, Finding Balance has been helping people walk in freedom by discovering where Jesus fits into their struggles with food and body image. If you want more biblical truth and encouragement, head on over to FindingBalance.com and subscribe to our free daily vitamin devotional. While you're there, explore our Christ-centered Lasting Freedom online course and small group tools. You can help keep this ministry going by donating today at FindingBalance.com. See you next time. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, or prescribe a particular course of action. If you have or suspect you may have an eating disorder, please consult your healthcare provider. If you desire to receive faith-based care, visit ChristianTreatmentFinder.com to browse professionals with a Kingdom campaign against eating disorders.